Doing today, the rate of change on the outside is greater than the rate of change on the inside.
And welcome to the 2017 LEHRN HR Tech Expo. Some of you have maybe been here before, maybe not. Who's new? Just give us a quick look. Wow, wonderful. I want you to know that LEHRN is a not-for-profit Minnesota corporation. We have a board of directors representing both vendors and companies in our region. Our board members have regular meetings, and we try to keep a good account of our fiscal responsibilities. Unfortunately, I can't get all these people in the same room at the same time, so to show the entire board, I had to do a little amateur photoshopping, but we have a great group. We have board elections every year. If you're interested in doing slavish labor a couple of times a year and having great ideas about what's going on in HR systems, we'd love to have you self-nominate yourself to be on the board. So we have a nonprofit organization, we have a board of directors, we have a motto, keep on learning. But we always say it in Latin, servo erudicio. We also have a handshake, but it's not secret handshake, it's just a handshake. So if you can kind of imagine that, okay, in your fingers. So I'd like you to stand up and shake your neighbor's hand and say, servo erudicio. Stand up and shake your hands here. Servo erudicio. You're now all official LEHRN members. You got the handshake and the motto, so you're down. So here we are at the Rivercenter. We've tried to scale up our event one more level this year. One of the nicest conference facilities in the Twin Cities. We're happy to be here. People wonder how a little operation like ours can mount an event like this. It's because of you. You guys come. And we try to develop the professional exchange of value from our vendors to our practitioners, and hope you can take full advantage of the day. Our keynote speaker this morning, Jason Averbook, and I were talking about what's going on in the industry. And you may remember Jason wrote this great blog about 4 or 5 months ago called We Shouldn't Be Frosting a Moldy Cake. We shouldn't be frosting a moldy cake. And the idea was that HR has been working on strategic issues for 30 years. And we've used technology to make things more efficient, but have we really been solving our strategic problems? And the answer may be not, and the question is why not? And we think that part of the problem is you say, I've got a problem. And I know the answer is out there somewhere. If I can just find it, if I can find out where that answer is, I can bring it into my organization. Well, the answer isn't out there. The answer's in there. The idea being that you need to start looking into your organization, to your unique workforce, your unique business, your unique industry, your unique culture, to understand how to drive success. And this is what Jason's theme has been the last 6 months since you started LeapGen. And that's what we're going to be talking about this morning, transforming HR from the inside out. Jason Averbook is probably LEHRN's best friend. He's been with us since the beginning. He's been a good-natured guy. He's been very helpful. He's been a contributor. And he's always been pretty damn cooperative. And we'd love to have him. Jason, come on up. You're on stage. We welcome you to LEHRN 2017 annual conference, our HR Tech Expo. Leave with an edge. Jason, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
I'll switch here.
Good morning. That wasn't really good. They're kind of dead. Good morning. Okay, awesome. So thank you guys for being here. And as Matt said, LEHRN, great event. Right? I didn't see how many of you said it was your first time. Okay, cool. So this is gonna be fun. So guys, one of the keys to this event is interaction. What we're gonna do throughout the event here is create together. So we're creating content, we're creating our mission, we're creating what we're gonna talk about throughout the event. So this is gonna be a little bit different of keynote. I'm gonna ask you to watch this real quick to get started.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So you guys, I love this video. I use it whenever I speak. Some of you that heard me speak have probably seen me use it before. It's like a prayer for me. But it's something that I think is really important for everything that this industry does and stands for, which is that we have to think different. We need to wake up every morning, start at 0, and think different. And if we're not thinking different, we're probably going to do what? The same thing we've been doing forever. So we have a lot of different people in the room here. For the session this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to think different. Okay, so we're going to use a piece of technology called Slido. Has anyone ever used Slido? I'm so excited no one's used Slido. Okay, so go to slido.com. Or for those of you that are dying to have another app on your device, you can download the mobile app also, if anyone fits in that category. Slido.com, and the event that you're going to type in is called LEHRN, L-E-H-R-N. Does everyone know how to use their device? Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to get started with Slido. What Slido allows us to do is it allows you not to sit on your butts for the next 45 minutes. It allows you to interact with everything that we're doing, okay? Which means I'm going to be asking you questions, and you're going to respond. And it's going to show me how many people have responded, so if you're not responding, we're not moving on. Do you hear what I said? If we're not responding, we're not moving on. Because guess what? We're all learning together throughout this. Guess what we're also doing? We're creating content. John here creates a ton of content. Okay, he writes amazing blogs. It's an amazing organization. How many of you are creators? You create content. You post things on Facebook. Anyone? Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Tinder. Laugh, you guys, wake up. Oh my God. Okay, wake up. Did everyone get Slido to work? Okay, we're going to start with a poll. Okay, the first poll we're going to do is this poll. Wow, I've got a lot of good questions already coming in. We're going to skip over those, though. How many LEHRN HR Tech Expos have you been to? 5 or more? 2 to 4? New this year? Or 1? Look at the votes. People are voting, Matt. 144 votes. Now, this is just a test question. Okay, but we're going to use this a lot throughout the session so that you guys can help see so we can all see where we are. Because our concept of today is we're on a journey to learn. All of the breakout sessions that have been put together, all of the keynotes that have been put together, they're all tied to helping you through some of the concepts that are thinking about how do we transform HR from the inside, which we all are part of the inside right here today, going out. What's the out? When you leave here to go back into your specific workforce. So we have at least 175 people that voted. Raise your hand if you're having technical issues. The guy that won rock, paper, scissors is also responsible for fixing anyone's device. He didn't know that. So 177 is our gauge. So throughout the session, we're going to be using that to see what we get from a response standpoint. Now, I'm going to switch back over to the presentation and look at this quote. I think this quote personifies what we're all facing in the world of digital HR, anything we do from a system standpoint. It's from a gentleman named Jack Welch, who's the former CEO of GE. When the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. Think about it for a second. When the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. Why is that important? It's important because what we're being judged on today as an HR function is everything that happens outside of us. Does that make sense? When people say, your user experience sucks, why do they say that? Because they're comparing it to Facebook or LinkedIn. Or they say, doing employee self-service isn't user-friendly. Why are they saying that? They're comparing it to buying something on Amazon, right? How many of you have Slido technology or technology like this in your organizations that you can get up and running in 2 seconds and automatically understand the face of the employee? Like 1 or 2. Do you see what I mean by rate of change on the outside? You guys just installed new software without calling IT. You interacted, and we got results. How many of you went to training to do that? No one. How many of you had to go through major change management efforts to do that? No one. So if we think about what we're doing today, the rate of change on the outside is greater than the rate of change on the inside. So we all have to think about that and think about it from a lens standpoint. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on that throughout. And the question that you'll see up on the screen is basically, why are you here? What do you want to learn today? So I just launched this question. What do you hope to learn today? What do you want to learn? Who's the best vendor that does applicant tracking? What's a data model? Why I wore that chicken thing on my head? Who's LeapGen? Who's ServiceNow? Who's Oracle? Who's ADP? How do I select a new benefits provider? How do I build an integration? You see some of the responses coming up on the screen? Those are all yours. I'm not making them up. I'm not typing. Those are all yours. Look, we've got trends, we've got technology, we've got analytics, we've got networking. Now, Matt's lucky that the content that he's created happens to match exactly what you wrote. But if we look at these things, look at the big words, look at the small words, those are based on how many people are typing in the same things. Guys, guess what this is an example of? This is an example of an analytic. Does that make sense? This is an example of data. Now, how many of you can run reports this fast and get, oh, wow, here's the visualization of my workforce? Like people giggle. You can't. But this is that outside looking in again. Look how fast we're doing this. We're creating content, and we're creating it together. So networking number one, you're going to have plenty of time for that. Look at onboarding. Interesting. That's awesome to see. Trends, talent management, new technology, purpose, tech solutions, talk, strategy. So we'll keep these open. All of these are going to be made available to you afterwards so that you'll have access to them to see what people are talking about. But really interesting to see where the world is when it comes to these things. So when we go back to our slides, what we're here today for is to learn. We're also here because we are all coaches. How many of you think of yourselves as a coach in life? Oh my God. So my mom happens to be in the front row today, which is like, she never gets to see me speak, so it's cool to come back to Minneapolis from where I live in Los Angeles. Like, no, I mean, but one of my biggest coaches. And like, she didn't even raise her hand, which made me like, wow, she's definitely not even listening. But from a coaching standpoint, like that's what we are. We're looking for our coaches, right? And you guys are here to go back to your organizations to coach. Does that make sense? Like some of you might be here just to get the day off of work, but our goal is to learn and to go back to coach. And then finally, we're creators. So we're creating this together. So whether it's Twitter you use, whether it's Facebook you use, whether it's Instagram you use, whether it's these internal tools like Slido we're using, create content today. Create content, and even if you don't share it outside because you don't want anyone to laugh at it, Or you're afraid you're going to post it, no one's going to hit like? Share it with someone. Because that's how we all get better in this space. So, what are the big things that organizations are thinking about from an HR standpoint today? These are the top 10. So wherever I go around the world and talk about HR transformation, HR digital, digital HR, these are all the things that people like throw up. Not like throw up, but say, wow, how do we innovate and keep the lights on at the same time? What should we do with cloud? What's this thing called design thinking? What's this thing called experience? These are the things that people talk about. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk through those at a high level. But one of the things that's so important about any sort of work that you do, whether it's process or technology, is you have to think about your organization's culture and your organization's DNA before you understand what it is you can do. Does that make sense? This is your pre-work before you go talk to vendors and before you go to sessions. Because when all of a sudden you say, hey, here's a new vendor, I'd love to bring them in. You need to judge, is our organization, what are they going to do? Is that going to be organ rejection? Or is that going to work? And if not, what do I have to do? So look at this study. The number one reasons that HR transformations or digital transformations fail is the first thing, culture. We work in, people say this to me all the time. I want to be innovative, but our culture doesn't allow it. I want to be innovative, but our leaders don't let us do it. I want to be innovative, but we can't get the budget. Do any of you ever use those things? Don't, because they're excuses. You could innovate with Slido. It's free, by the way. You may say, wow, someone's going to block that. We don't allow people to download apps. Maybe. But we all have that opportunity to innovate. So culture is big. The second thing is that concept of stop confusing experience with a campaign. We push things out as campaigns, and then the minute they get traction, what do? Move on to the next. Does that make sense? You hear me, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that that's how we work. Unfortunately, that's how the world works today. What's news today isn't news tomorrow. What's news yesterday isn't news today. So for any of us to change our organizations and change how HR works, we have to think of it as ongoing work. Every day we learn. Every day we innovate. Every day we try new things. But if it's just a campaign, then we're like, oh, that's just another thing that HR is doing. Oh, that's just another cool thing. New brand every day, trying something new every day, versus being an organization that really wants to change. So let's go on to this question, because I'm really excited to see this result. Grade your organization on having the culture to truly transform. Does your organization have the culture to truly digitally transform? A, B, C, D, F. Easy grading. You need to tell the truth. All your results are anonymous. They're not going to be shared with your boss. We live in a transparent world. Interesting. 135 we're up to. Remember our gauge was 177. We have to get close. Who's a B? Sir, right there. Why do you give yourself a B? You think that whatever you say, the organization's ready to do and people are going to accept it? Okay. Okay, so they're a software company. And the funny thing is, when software companies speak, that everyone's like, that works for them, but that would never work for us. Did anyone think that when he said he's a software company? People do. Who's not a software company that gave themselves a B? Sir, what industry are you in? Construction. Awesome. And why do you give yourself a B? Do you think employees will innovate? Okay, good. Not management-led. So this is awesome to see, you guys. Like, look at that bee. That means everything we're going to talk about today, we're ready for, right? We're ready for this change. Now, the job of LEHRN and the job for every time you come to an event like this is how do we get continued ready and stay ready. So I always start with the first trend, the future of work. What's the future of work look like? It starts with being transparent. What does transparent mean? How many of you post things like I said, online? Raise your hands if you post things. Raise your hand 10 years ago if you posted things. Raise your hand 20 years ago if you posted things. Did anyone of you ever take out want ads in the paper to show pictures of your children? Why are y'all laughing? Like, that's, right? We post jobs on Facebook. We used to post jobs in the paper. We post jobs on LinkedIn. We used to post jobs in the paper. Why did we not do it? Interesting. It's there, right? But we also live in a world that's much more transparent. So I have a 9-year-old. His name is Alex. And he uses Instagram. Some of you are like, oh, you're so weird letting him use Instagram. Does anyone have a 9-year-old that uses Instagram? Someone raise their hands. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, so like these kids are using these technologies, and he just had a virtual party because he got 300 followers. Now, funny enough, like we track all his followers. They're all friends. We don't let him go in places that he's not supposed to. But his hashtag, everyone knows what a hashtag is, his hashtag was, "We did it." Like he was having a party with his community of 300 followers. I was like, oh my God, this 9-year-old is building followers. But, you know, that's a digital native versus most of us that are digital immigrants. Like, someone probably didn't know what a want ad was when I just asked that question. But we grew up with want ads, right, where we wouldn't do that stuff. So the world of transparency is there, and it's entering the workforce every day. Now, there's a lot of organizations around the world that I talk to that are saying, we are getting ready for the millennials. We have to get ready for the millennials. The millennials are coming. Why are y'all laughing? Why do you laugh? Yeah, they're here. That's the funniest thing about that statement to me. And it's a lot of CHROs and CEOs that say it. They're like, the millennials, like we're not ready. We're not ready. Do you know what the age of the millennials are? 22 to 37. Based on the study, some of them are 42. Like that's old. Like no, that's not old. But those people are here. So when people say, well, we have to think about changing our workforce experience, or we're going to do a 5-year plan to think about what the impact millennials are going to have, like they're here. They're the ones that are actually creating your organization going forward. They're the ones that are going to decide whether people buy in. Raise your hand if you're a millennial. I think millennials, if you're doing implementation of technology or process and you don't have a millennial running it, you're in big trouble. People are like, well, they don't have the experience. Well, guess what? They don't have the experience to make the mistakes that we've made for the last 25 or 30 years. Does that make sense? Even if they're not running it, they have to be part of it. Because guess what? As digital immigrants, our lens is different. Like we can be as cool and hip to technology as we want, but if we didn't grow up digital natives, a lot of us. Does that make sense? Like when you say landline, they don't know what that is. When you say fax or call, that's not like, that doesn't make sense. Like both my boys are getting attitudes, like some of your kids. How many of your kids have attitudes? Oh, cool. Not Instagram, but attitudes. Like, oh, that's so stupid. Why would you call? Like the number of times, like the Delta had this huge issue last week, or this week, was it last week? Some of you heard about it or were affected by. I was on the hold for an hour and a half, and my kids were dying laughing. Like, why are you holding? Why don't you just go online? Like, I can't figure out how to do it. Let me do it for you. Like, if people are still calling HR or calling your call center, when people come into your organization, if that's what you give them, guess what they do? Laugh. Does that make sense? They laugh. The outside world is ahead of our inside world. So what do we need to do? We need to look from the inside out and change that. We live in a world that's on demand. We get information when we need it. We live in a world that's data makes or breaks what we do. You know, a lot of times in crowds like this, I'll ask people to chant this. Actually, I will. Data is sexy.
Data's sexy.
Thank you. Right, on the count of 3, data is sexy. 1, 2, 3.
Data is sexy.
Thank you. Now, how many of you didn't like that? A lot of us don't believe that. But everything we do today is based on data. And all of the innovation going on in the world is based on data. I had the really cool opportunity of being in Moscow about a month ago, not related to the president. And I was able to see a new toilet. Now, some of you are like, oh my God, this dude's a freak, talking about toilets in Moscow. But Kohler was showing off their new toilet at this innovation conference I was at. And one of the things I thought was amazing, and this is scary, but it's really important to think about, is in 3 years, every toilet is going to be a smart toilet. So what's a smart toilet do? Whatever you put into the toilet, there's an app that immediately diagnoses what you put in the toilet and benchmarks it day to day. Now, you guys are laughing, but it's true. So early detection of cancer, early detection of diabetes, early detection of any infection, all via the data that the toilet's collecting. They're saying 30 to 40%. They're able to, some of the people from Mayo Clinic are nodding their heads because they already see this stuff. 30 to 40% earlier, they're detecting disease. Oddly, in Moscow, it's already being used. Here, we can't get it past the FDA. Weird. But fascinating to see what data's doing, right? The world, because we all have devices and because technology is wherever we are, we now have the data to do things. Yet most of us are still not pushing data out to people or collecting data from people in a way that we can actually use it to do things like that. So that's called a prescriptive analytic, what I just said. I'm prescribing that you should go to the doctor based on what just came out of you. Like, we need to say the same thing to leaders, right? Based on what's happening in your department, you need to see a doctor. And guess what? As your business partner, I'm not here to fat finger data. I'm here to coach you. Does that make sense? That's where the world is going. Yet many of us are still like, well, we have to get the system live, we have to get the system live, which we do. But the goal is not to get the system live. The goal is to get good data. And data is the new oil for us. So not those with the biggest data win, but those with the best data win. And those that do the best things with the data will win going forward. Does that make sense? Data is so important to me because all these vendors here, the only reason that they're here is to help you with data. A lot of people, no, they're transactional people. Well, guess what a transaction is? Data. Guess what we do with the data? Make business decisions. The gentleman that, Nick Garbus, Matt said, one of the brilliant guys in our space, the reason that he's invited to a board meeting, did you hear that? A board meeting? The reason he's invited to the board meeting is because he's actually bringing data that means something. Does that make sense? All of us still have this thing about how do we get a seat at the table? Well, we want a seat, but we don't have anything to bring. If we bring data like Nick brings, that's what's going to get us ahead. And that all leads us to this whole concept of consumerism and experience. So how was your experience? Think about how many of you have ever used self-checkout at a grocery store or Target? Do you like it? Yeah? How many of you ever chat with people online? Like, she doesn't like it. How many of you chat with people online? Would you rather chat or call? Chat? Chat. Some chat. How many of you like to shop online? Would you rather shop online or go to a store? Raise your hand if you'd rather go to a store. Okay? Would you rather call a store to see if they have something, or would you rather look online to see if there's inventory? Raise your hand if it's online. Okay? Now, do you see all the different hands? Like different hands going up at different times? What that is the problem that every one of us have in HR today. We're dealing with 5 different technographics of people that all like different things. So a lot of the work that we do is like helping people design their HR service delivery model, customer experience, things like that. And they're like, well, tell me what the best organizations are doing. Well, guess what? The best organizations are listening to their workforce and saying, wow, we've got 5 different types of people. How are we going to do this? You know, and the strategy is, how do you get ahead of those? Versus many organizations say, well, you know, we've got this small plant in Cedar Rapids that they're not ready for it, so we can't do it. In HR, when we think about experience, we have to focus on the 99.99% of people that want to do things going forward, not the 0.01% who might not be ready. Does that make sense? HR spends its whole life worried about the 0.01% who might break the rules, or 0.01% who are not compliant, or 0.01% who aren't ready. That holds us all back. Does that make sense? Like, we have to figure out, let's do what we need to do for the mass, the future, and then let's retrofit something for the people that still print out their emails in order to review them. I mean, you laugh, but it's true. Like, many CEOs that you go talk to, they'll be like, they'll never do that. Their secretary still prints out their emails. So we have to think about that when we think about experience. So how many of you are dealing with experience today? Workforce experience. You say either your user experience on your apps isn't good, or you're developing a portal, or you're looking for a knowledge base. Anyone? Raise your hand. No one? No one in this room cares about user experience. You all have to. Like, I don't know what the heck you're here for if you don't. Because our audience are all people that care about that. So let's go into our device, which is why no one answered my question, because they saw me jump down and they're all thinking, and they saw the slide. Rate your customer experience, your workforce experience compared to customer experience. So think about your organization. Do you have a better workforce experience or a better customer experience? So if you're Mayo Clinic, do you provide a better experience to your customers or to your workers? If you're Target, do you provide a better experience to your customers or to your workers? If you're Frank, do you design a better experience for your customers or your workers? So we're rating our workforce experience. Five being the best, we've got a whopping 4%. 4, 18%. We've got, I should know with this group, never to make a number right in the middle. Every time I come here, that's always the thing that wins, is right in the middle. I forgot. Now, look at that. It's very indicative. Why is our customer experience better than our worker experience? Do customers matter more than our employees? Do they? This has to be your wake-up call, you guys, to talk to CEOs and CHROs about this. Do you know what creates the best customer experience? Your people. If the experience that you're providing your people is not as good as the experience you're providing your customers, guess what your people do? Leave. Guess what your customers do if the customer experience isn't good? United Airlines. Leave. Right? But when we think about these things, we have to think this way. So, does that make sense? Yet a lot of us are still rolling out dumb self-service. Or click here to go to the LMS. What's an LMS? Does an employee know what an LMS is? People have heard my dumb joke about effective date for years. We still roll out things that the first field is effective date. What's an effective date to an employee? It's a kiss at the end of the first date. It was an effective date. You get it? Employees don't know what effective dates are. Like if I say, what's your effective date of your move? You're like, is that the date that affects my payroll? Is that the date that the truck's coming? Is that the date I'm actually getting? Like, employees don't know that. So when we think about that, we have to think about how do we start to put things with a lens inside out to the worker, not us. If the worker benefits, if the worker uses it, who gets better data? Us. If they don't use it, we don't get good data. Does that make sense? Like, we need them, which means we have to put a lens on, like a Snapchat glasses or contact lenses, and be like, I have to look at this through the eye of the employee. Every message, every type of user experience, every technology you buy. You know what is really interesting to me? Do you know what percentage, according to many studies, of experience is technology? What percentage? 10. Isn't that interesting? 10%. The other 90% is made up of things like change management, marketing, governance, process reimagination, digitization. It's not the technology at all. But you know who oftentimes run these projects? IT. I'm like, why is IT running a project where 10% of it is technology? And they're like, well, you know, the HR people are too busy. Does anyone ever hear that? Guess what you're going to get? Something that HR doesn't like. And if HR doesn't like it, who else doesn't like it? The employees. Does that make sense? We have to focus on the people running the projects being that with that lens also. Now, that doesn't mean people, how many of you are in IT? Yeah, my goal wasn't to offend and saying you shouldn't do it. My goal is you can't do it alone. Like, IT can't just say, oh yeah, everyone's going to use this. I'm working with 2 companies right now where IT's rolled out these really cool new performance management systems, but they have no ability to get leaders to actually understand the impact. And guess what? The leaders won't use them. And guess who gets blamed? The software vendor. Like, well, we need a new solution. That's what it is. And it's not that at all. It's process and culture and change. Does that make sense? So when we think about experience, we have to think in those lenses. The other thing we have to, the other thing that we have to think about, I was like, why is no one looking at my slide? The other thing we have to think about is we can't think in modules. Does that make sense? That's how the vendors, they sell modules because that's easy. You have to think in processes. People work in processes, they don't work in modules. When someone wants to go online, they don't say, I need to find the recruiting module. They say, no, I need to hire someone. They go online, well, I need to use the learning module. Now I'm trying to learn something. Does that make sense? Those are our terms, modules. Those aren't the employees' terms. So now, how do we be successful at this? We need skills. We need skills to be successful. And when it comes to skills, one of the things I always talk about is that there's a big difference between people that are digitally competent and people that are ready to digitally transform. Does that make sense? Look, how many of you can install software? Oh my God. Wake up. Everyone can install software, right? If you download apps, how many of you have CD-ROMs on your phone? How many of you have disk drives on your phone? Does everyone know what a disk is? We all install software. We're all competent. How many of you configure software? We all configure software, right? Now, how many of us are really thinking about how do we use technology to transform, to reimagine, to digitize? That's where it starts to get tough. So one of the things I tell organizations, and some of you are going to be offended, but I put up the slide, HRIS as a function needs to change. It needs to be much more process-focused. It needs to be much more data-focused. It needs to be much more change management-focused, and still be technology-focused. Does that make sense? But so often, HRIS is still seen as the people, if my computer doesn't work, who do I call? Or the app doesn't work, or I forgot my password. I have to call HRIS. Like, we have to make this function strategic. It should report to the CHRO. It shouldn't be buried under comp and benefits. If it is, it's very hard to get the ear that we're looking for. And I'm preaching, by the way. Like, this is not easy. But to truly get where we're trying to get to as a function, we have to do there. We have to get that. And finally, we have to be storytellers. How many of you think you have the skills required to do what I'm talking about, digitally transform? Raise your hand. How many of you don't? Okay. That's fair. I'm not going to talk about it in more detail right now, but I'm going to talk about this. There is a huge difference when we think about this space between automation and digitization. Most of what we've done in HR is we've taken our old processes and what have we done? Put them online. That's automation. Digitization, if there's nothing else you remember out of this presentation, digitization is a combination of reimagining based on how the world works today, which, by the way, tied to consumerism, tied to shopping, and tied to everything that you have on your device. There's no HR process, unless it's just being done by HR, that should work the way it worked 10 years ago. If you have them, they're old. And people are going on Glassdoor saying they're old. And it's not a great place to work because our processes don't work. Or how many times do you enter name? If name gets entered more than 0 times in your organization, that's a problem. It should be entered by the applicant and never entered again. If it isn't, you need to digitize. And people are like, oh, we don't have the ability. Yes, you do. We do have that ability. But this is a key component of the skills required. And guess who you're going to get this from? Do you think any one of those vendors on that floor is going to give you this? No. Are they going to give you the tools that can do it? My God, yes. But are they going to just say, if you, or they might say this, but if you put in our software, you're going to be digitized? They need you to be the creators. They need you to be the people that actually think different about what you're going to do with this stuff. So let's talk about digitization. Go to your device again. Pull it out. Let's go to our question. Does your organization or you think about the difference between automation and digitization? Do you think about the difference between automation and digitization? Just putting something online versus reimagining it where in the future it's going to add more value. Any process you undergo, any technology that you put in, this is what you should be thinking about. Are we just changing the way performance management works just to do it? No, we're doing it to add more value. Are we trying to do analytics just to do it? No, we're trying to add more value. This is key, and this is something that I see paralyze our function, is we take things and just put them online versus truly reimagining. It's a challenge that I have for all of you. It's a challenge I give my kids all the time. Like, think different. Remember that video? Like, be the crazy one who says, wow, imagine we could do this. And something you should ask every vendor today is, could we do that in your tools? I'm going to go right to this next slide, the next poll, because I think it's really interesting. What is your biggest, before I talk about it, HR technology challenge? Okay, now, do you see there's quotes around technology? The reason there's quotes around technology is that what you should put up there needs to be technical. It shouldn't be, people won't use it. It shouldn't be that stuff. It should be everything related to technology. Integration, choosing the right vendor, training. That's not technology. Getting employees on board. Is that technology? It's related. Do you see what I'm doing? It's related to the technology, but it's not the technology. So why I'm bringing this up is just like I talked about experience being 90% not technology, when we deploy things, 90% of it is us. So I'm going to pick on technology for just a second because I think it's really interesting and it's an important topic. There's only 108 people that have replied, by the way. I realize it's a harder one because you have to type versus just touch a button. But if we actually think about the concept of, how many of you have seen a software demo ever of anything? Okay, cool. You're going to see some today, and you should go see them. Joanne, can I pick on you?
Sure.
Joanne, you're with?
Cortec.
Okay, so it may not be Joanne, but we're going to pretend it is. So when Joanne sees a demo, she's probably watching it. She's like, oh, if we only had that. Oh, that could really help us. Like, people start to drool. And what's really funny is that the people that usually drool are the CHROs because they're like, oh, this is going to be easy. Yeah, if we just had that, it would be perfect. We'll just go there. And what's fascinating, has anyone of you ever had this experience? You leave a demo, you're like, yes, that could really help. I really love the way that looks. Then we get into our next phase, which is our implementation discussion, and it turns from a smile to like a flat line. Like we were like, it's going to be a little bit harder than we thought, but we're going to be able to do it. You know, we're going to be able to do it. And then we go live. The Holy Grail. Go live party. Right? We go live. We've all gained 30 pounds. Some of us are divorced. But we did it. We went live. And then all of a sudden, the CHRO says, that's not what we saw in the demo. That doesn't look like what we talked about. You're like, well, this is just phase one. Clearly, this is striking a chord with you guys. Like phase two, we'll start to do that. Phase three, we'll do that. One of the things that's so crazy about this is that, guys, how many of you download apps on your phone that you don't like? A lot of us. What do you do if you don't like it? Delete it. Richard, how often do you go back and see if it got better? Rarely. This is the same thing with phase one, you guys. If phase one, people say, well, that's what we've been doing all along. Or, wow, they spent 9 months and gained 30 pounds. They had a party just to do this? You're like, no, phase two will get better. Phase three. Like, that world doesn't work anymore. It used to work when the HR people were our audience. Because why? That was their job. Like, they had to use it, right? Like, we used to put ads in the paper that said ADP experience preferred, PeopleSoft experience preferred, Workday experience preferred. Why? Because we had to use the technology. But now we're pushing it out to people who that's not their job, right? So if phase one doesn't work, they're like, we're not going back. I watch portals every day get put in that I think are nothing but like glorified link farms. You know, just a series of click here to do this, click here to do this, click here to go to this site, click here to go to this site. People don't, that's not the way people work. So when we think about these technology challenges, these are great. Thinking beyond today's needs, lack of software, manual processes, integrated systems, they're all good, but going forward, we have to think differently about how we actually put in the technology. So from a presentation standpoint, this concept of a hub and spoke model, how many of you have this? Where you have, how many of you are wizards at master data management? Meaning name gets entered once, never entered again. Our job needs to be that. Think about the tools that gentleman Brandon, we just gave Alexa. Think if you talked to Alexa and there was no data behind it. What would Alexa do? Nothing. My kid ordered mini wheats from Alexa. They were delivered in 4 hours. I didn't put the filter on to have it approved. We got a box of 10 mini wheats. Like in 4 hours. But that's because there was data behind the voice. Everything that's being developed today around natural language processing, when you speak to Siri, why does Siri respond? There's data. Are there 10 different data sources? No, there's one. Can you imagine if Siri had, oh, sorry, hold on. Got to check this one. Nope, not the right one. Got to check this one. So everything that we do going forward around AI, artificial intelligence, and data and bots all require us to have good data. Because guess what? If we don't, that stuff doesn't work. When Matt talked about the frosting on a moldy cake, that's what I'm talking about. There's a lot of frosting, right? Cool technology that you're going to see here today, but if you don't have good data, it doesn't work. It becomes really, really hard. Three last things. Design thinking, A. How many of you know design thinking inside and out? I ask you, if you don't know design thinking, go to Khan Academy. There's a 20-minute free course. 20 minutes. No, that's too long for most people's attention, including mine, on Design Thinking 101. What Khan Academy, Khan Academy. What Khan Academy basically is an online learning source. When I was in Moscow a month ago, people were like, we can't afford to go to classes. Like, there's so much opportunity to learn. Like, today's world, it's crazy. Design thinking, 5 key steps. Going from understand to validate. The biggest, by the way, this is how all of your work should be. Not marathons, but sprints. Design thinking. Notice the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. HR's biggest challenge is up there in the top left where it says day. It doesn't say month, it doesn't say quarter, it doesn't say year, it says day. So how do I go from idea to validation in 5 days, or maybe months or weeks, depending on your organizational size? The goal of this, though, is fail fast. Does that make sense? Like, don't spend 9 months putting something in and they're like, oh, it's not going to work. Because while you were busy doing this, 8 competitors ran behind you and beat you in today's world. So we have to think like designers and think fast. Adoption. How do we think different about adoption? We move from adoption to addiction. Does that make sense? Well, how many of you slept with your device last night? How many of you slept in the same room as your device last night? How many of you talked to your device before you talked to the person in bed next to you? There's a study, 80% of us do. So people don't like to admit it. I should have done an anonymous thing. But we're all addicted to our devices. It's not bad. Richard, what app are you addicted to? Airline app. Klaus, what about you? Your email? I'm addicted to Waze. Anyone use maps, GPS? Like my kids, it drives them, they're like, you seriously don't know where you're going? I'm like, no, I know where I'm going. I just want to make sure, like, and they're asking me. I'm like, how did you get around before you had that phone? It's like paper maps, remember those? It took up your whole windshield. Yeah, but we are addicted to these apps. Now the question for your people is, are they addicted to your HR apps? They're not going to be if they use them. Monica, when's the last time you got married? 16 years ago. If they use them once every 16 years to change their marital status, they're not going to get addicted. Richard, when's the last time you had a baby? 35 years ago. If you use them every 35 years, they're not going to get addicted to it. Ma'am, when's the last time you had a baby? Yes. 2 years ago. How about every 2 years? Is that better? Would you be addicted if you every 2 years? Ma'am, when's the last time you had a baby? 17. How about you? A month ago. How about you? In the red. Never. Wow. How would you be addicted to if you had a baby? Never? Like, how about the new employee self-service? Do you like it? You can say you had a baby. Are you addicted to it? You don't know, right? Would you have a baby just so you could use the employee self-service? No? So when we think about the things that we push out to the workers, do they find a ton of value in it? Not unless we make it a big deal and make them addicted to it. So the last thing here is strategy. And the reason that strategy is so important is because we've talked about a lot for the last 50 minutes. And what we've talked about are lots of different concepts that you're going to learn throughout the rest of this event. At every booth here, at every shopper's track, at every EduTrack session, you're going to learn more about data. You're going to learn more about experience. You're going to learn more about process imagination. But what ties all this stuff together is what? A strategy. Okay? If we don't have a strategy, what are we doing? We're doing busy work. Or as I heard someone on the plane say, and I was like, where did this expression ever come from? We're running around with like chickens with our heads cut off. Do you ever listen to people say that? You're like, where does that come from? Have you ever seen a chicken run around with their head cut off? You have? Oh, I've never seen one. I didn't even know it happened. I was like, what a weird saying. But if we think about that, we're all just doing busy work. We're all just keeping busy, but we don't actually tie it back to a strategy. So what's a strategy? A strategy is three things. I have a strategy and a plan. Strategy is 2 years in henna, not ink. Does that make sense? There's people that say, well, we have one, it's 5 years old. No, that doesn't work anymore. A plan is what I'm doing in the next quarter to meet my strategy. And if all of a sudden the loud recruiter comes along and says, I need an ATS, you're like, whoa, the strategy says that's when we're dealing with that. Okay? The second is, what's my plan for deployment and measuring adoption to addiction? Okay, not just go live. And then the last thing that I think is the most important thing that you're going to see throughout this day is what we can do to move this function from the inside out is think more about number 3. What is 3? Run, optimize, and innovate. Guess what that stands? Look at the acronym. ROI. That's where the value comes. So for all of our go live parties, they should be go begin parties. Like, that's when it actually starts. Why do we take our good people off the projects once we're live? In the world we live in today, which is cloud, which is perpetual beta, and it's always on, if we're not continuing to do that, we've got an amazing opportunity in front of us that we're not taking advantage of. Watch this real quick.
Will you fight? No! We will run! And we will live!
Shame on you. This could be the greatest night of our lives. But you're gonna let it be the worst.
And I guarantee a week won't go by in your life you won't regret walking out, letting them get the best of you.
Well, I'm not going home.
We've got too far!
And I'm gonna stay right here and fight for this lost cause.
A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
I'm not saying it's gonna be easy.
You're gonna work harder than you ever worked before.
But that's fine, we'll just get tougher with it.
If a person grits his teeth and shows real determination,
failure is not an option.
That's how winning is done.
Believe me when I say
We can break this army here.
And win just one for the Gipper.
But I say to you, what every warrior has known since the beginning of time,
You've got to get mad.
I mean plumb mad dog mean.
if you would be free men, then you must
Fight to fulfill that promise. Let us
cut out their living guts
1 inch at a time.
and they will know what we can do!
Let no man forget how menacing we are. We are lions.
You're like a big bear, man.
This is your time.
Seize the day.
Never surrender.
victory or death.
That's the Chicago way.
Who's with me?
Clap! Clap! Go, my team guy! Clap!
All right, let's fly. And gentlemen in England, now up bed. Shall
No, my name is the Lord. When I tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take
our Independence Day.
The reason I like that video is because I think that it summarizes everything that we go through as a function. Now, real quickly, I hate keynote speaking. What I like doing is coaching. And one of the things I'd like to leave with is throughout the rest of the day, that Slido thing, remember how you get to it? Learn. There's something there that says questions. So during the day, as you think of a question, like you're in a session, you're like, I have no idea what that means. Or you're thinking about, wow, why is this that way? Or you go by a vendor, you're like, why are they wearing that outfit? Or you go by, you sit, why is lunch so bad at these conferences? Whatever your question is, go into questions and type it. Just real quick. It's not going to take long. Go in and type it. What we're doing at the end is we're coming back together to talk about what we learned. And we're using this as our facilitation tool. Does that make sense? So the questions that are in there now, someone put, why didn't I win the rock, paper, scissors contest? Interesting. Jason, are you homeless? Where is SAP? What are the top challenges of the talent community in Minnesota? It all makes sense. We need to know how to convince decision makers who write the checks. All those are awesome. So throughout the day, I'm going to be looking at this, and what we're doing at the end is we're going to summarize and discuss the questions that you all have. Does that make sense? So this is your event. The content is all tied to it. So future is now. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, sponsors. Thank you, guests.